Pastor Brenda. It is again really nice to meet you in this space. I ask you to please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so that we can meet here again. I would like to do that. So I want to open up with a story from C.S. Lewis. This is from the Narnia series. It's from the book The Horse and the Boy. It's about the boy named Shasta. So I want to begin with this. Shasta, the boy in the story, is very tired and has nothing left inside of him. He's feeling so sorry for himself that tears are rolling down his cheeks. Then he feels fear. Shasta has discovered that someone or somebody is walking beside him in that darkness where he can see nothing. The thing, or is it a person, is walking so quietly that he can hardly hear any footsteps. Shasta stops crying because now he has something to really cry about. He can hardly hear the footsteps, but he can feel the breath. The thing, or is it a person, was beside Shasta so very quietly that Shasta begins to hope that he is only imagining what his mind is fearing. Shasta keeps on walking while the unseen companion keeps on walking and breathing beside him. Finally, Shasta speaks. "Who are you?" he said, barely above a whisper. "One who has waited long for you to speak," said the thing. Its voice was not loud, but very large and deep. In that darkness, it was Aslan, the high king above all kings. In that darkness, Aslan explained to Shasta the full story to how he was never alone. Aslan was with Shasta through it all. Now here in the darkest time, Aslan was simply waiting for Shasta to speak so that Aslan could comfort him. Whew. So much in that story. In that darkest time, in that darkness, God is here with you, just waiting for you to speak. And in that darkness, it's amazing. And we're going to be talking about this throughout this whole teaching. God makes things known that he doesn't make known in the light. It is in this darkness where God is. And when we are in that darkness, when we feel so very alone, it turns out we're not that alone. Because see, with God, dark and night, light and day are not this either or thing with God. In the mystery of Creator God, there's not this either or about them. They just are, both part of his creation, both part of him. They just are. So as Eugene Peterson says, the theologian Eugene Peterson, we quote here often, the Hebrew evening and morning sequence conditions us to the rhythms of grace. We go to sleep and God begins his work. Great thought, isn't it? It's in the night when everything begins. It's in the night we rest, our bodies heal, the plants, the seeds grow, our life grows, our body heals. It's just in the night, so many things start. Then we wake up, and we begin with the grace of what has been done without our control. And we go into the day, and we do what God has us to do. That's how it works. And this verse we keep saying, using in this entire series, Exodus 20:21. As the people stood in the distance, Moses approached the dark cloud where God was. God is in the darkness. God is in the night. Otherwise, things just can't grow or heal. So we talk often in this church about how God is a God of justice. He's a God of love and a God of justice. And there's a both and with that. You need both. Love and justice go together. And where is God's justice found? Well, Psalm 97:2 tells us, dark clouds surround him. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. The foundation of his throne is where justice is. Which when you look at the book of Revelation, makes sense. There's a throne room. And that's where the justice is going to come, right? We have the right throne judgment. This is where the justice is going to come, and the righteousness. But notice what Psalm 97:2 says, dark clouds surround him. Yet the book of Revelation talks about this white throne. Like we envision all this light in this throne room, and yet God's on the throne and the dark clouds surround him. This, again, it's not an either or thought. In the light, here is the dark clouds, because this is where God is. This is where the righteousness and the justice is. And somehow in the mystery of Creator God, the darkness and the light coexist. But they exist because this is where the justice is. And we're going to see this throughout the whole Bible, just coming up here with this crazy true thought. So we're going to begin first in Psalm 139. This is a very beloved psalm, one you may have had quoted to you or read a lot in dark times in your life. Verse 12 says, but even in darkness I cannot hide from you. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are the same to you. There it is. So God is with me in that darkness. He's with me in the light, and he's with me in the darkness. And my life has had some very dark times. So we are invited into that darkness because that's where God is, and that is where we find righteousness and justice. And that is exactly what I want when I'm going through a really hard time, because something unjust happened to me, something unfair happened to me. There was an injustice. And I want God to respond. I want God to make things better. I want there to be justice for what happened. And where does that happen? In the darkness. Because the dark clouds surround him, and righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. So in the book Prayers in the Night by Tish Harrison Warren, she wrote this. This is so stinking true. The problem of pain can't be adequately answered because we don't primarily want an answer. When all is said and done, we don't want God to simply explain himself, to give an account of how hurricanes or head colds fit into his overall redemptive plan. We want action. We want to see things made right. Right? When my life has been smashed, and it has, I just want things to go back to where they were or to be done with. I want this season over with. I want the grief to heal me, because grief is healing. I want it to heal me, and I want it to be over with now. But there's this, there's this time that has to happen, and, the justice for it to happen, and an explanation of who God is nice, but it's better if God can just fix it, do the justice now, right? We know from the Exodus story of the Israelites that it was a cloud that led them through the desert, right? You familiar with that story at all? This is from Exodus 13:21-22. The Lord went ahead of them. He guided them during the day with a pillar of cloud, and he provided light at night with a pillar of fire. This allowed them to travel by day or by night, and the Lord did not remove the pillar of cloud or pillar of fire from its place in front of the people. So of course, a pillar of fire at night, that makes sense. It is night. You need the light to know what direction we're supposed to be in, whether we're camped or we're moving. This is the direction. You need the light. But in the daytime, wouldn't that pillar of cloud then be dark clouds? And God is leading the people out of Egypt into righteousness and justice. So the dark cloud is leading them towards the promised land, bringing about righteousness and justice. Do you see it? Okay. This is going to get better or deeper. In Exodus 19:9. So this is the Exodus 20 is where we get the 10 Commandments. These are the 10 Commandments of righteousness and justice, right? This is where the law was given to us. That's Exodus 20. So in Exodus 19:9 says, God spoke to Moses out of a thick cloud, which I'm going to assume means dark. The verse is, then the Lord said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud, Moses, so the people themselves can hear me when I speak with you. Then they will always trust you. And then you go into Exodus 20 and you hear this 5th century moment where the mountain quakes, there's sound, there's darkness, there's noises. I bet they could taste something in the air. I mean, all 5 senses are alerted because God is meeting Moses to give him the 10 Commandments, to give him these laws of righteousness. And of course, all of that is in the dark clouds, because that's where righteousness and justice is, right? Deuteronomy 4:11 and 12, as well as Deuteronomy 5:22 and 23, they say almost the same thing here. But this is another instance of that darkness and light being in the same place. You came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, while flames from the mountain shot into the sky. The mountain was shrouded in black clouds and deep darkness. And the Lord spoke to you from the heart of the fire. Darkness, fire. You heard the sound of his words, but he didn't see his form. There's only a voice. God desires to be near his people so much, is willing to mask the fullness of his glory in the dark clouds so that we can have righteousness and justice. Seems to be like a whole lot of extra when God could have simply sent a messenger. And of course we know, if you follow the arc of the Bible, God does eventually send a messenger in his son, born as a baby, grew up in this place, and then died on the cross. And what happened that Good Friday afternoon? We're going to get to that. But first, we got to get through 1 Kings. This is 1 Kings 8 and also 2 Chronicles 6. This is the story where King Solomon built the temple for God, and he's consecrating the temple. And what happens is the presence of God settles into the temple. And we find out that's actually dark clouds are in that temple. Then Solomon prayed, O Lord, you have said that you would live in a thick cloud of darkness. You may have seen artwork of this new temple, and you got like beams of light coming out of it when the presence of God filled the temple. But the scripture says that that was actually darkness. Because this temple was a place where you can go to meet with God for justice and righteousness. You see where I'm doing here? Then my favorite psalm, Psalm 18, is just such a descriptive picture of what happens when we pray. And I pray. Like I said, my heart has been broken so many times. And when I pray, I get this description. And this is verse 9:11. But look at the darkness and what happens when I speak prayers. Remember when Shasta just had to speak in the darkness? And Aslan said, I am here. Picture that. He opened the heavens and came down. Dark storm clouds were beneath his feet. Mounted on a mighty angelic being, he flew, soaring on the wings of the wind. He shrouded himself in darkness, veiling his approach with dark rain clouds. Those are dark storm clouds beneath his feet because God is stooping down to come to help me. I have prayed, God heard my prayers, and he is stooping down to come and hear me, to bring his righteousness and his justice to this brokenness in my life. That is such a beautiful picture. God is stooping down to get involved in my life to make something right again. Like, I wish it was tomorrow, but I've learned with the length of my life now that God does do this. I got to trust him for that time, but God does do this. And then we're going to just go to Matthew 27, 45 through 46, because this is Good Friday, and from noon to 3 p.m. the world became dark. Matthew 27, 45 through 46 says, At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? If God is consistent throughout the Bible here, God came near to Jesus when he was most overwhelmed, when he felt that forsakenness, that abandonment. God came near to him in this moment of righteousness and justice, because this is what the cross is all about. This is the moment the power of sin was broken, the power of death was broken. Justice has come. Again, I wish it was tomorrow, but justice has come. He has come to make things right. He gives us time, Romans 2:4. He gives us time. He's full of grace for that. But there's righteousness and justice that begins at the cross and comes out of there. So it is any surprise that there's dark clouds gathering at that moment. Do you see the Bible thread here? And then 1 Thessalonians 4, we hear about how Jesus is going to come again for us in the end, coming to us in the clouds. Do you think those clouds are light or dark? 1 Thessalonians 4:17, Then together with them, we who are still alive and remain on the earth will be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Then we will be with the Lord forever. Now, I've always assumed, and some of the paintings I've seen, there's be light coming down, and the clouds are white clouds and light shooting off of Jesus as he returns to earth to gather his own. But this is a moment of righteousness and justice, right? This is the final justice. This is things being made right because Jesus is returning for us. Those are going to be dark clouds. You see it? You see it? Here we go. Oh, there's a lot there, right? Darkness is where everything starts. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne, the base upon which everything is built. So dark and light, day and night are not this either or thing with God. It is God's presence in the darkness and in the light. The conversation we had as a church together, we meet together over Zoom on Friday nights, you're invited by the way, was if we can stop fighting the darkness, how we find God, how God is so clear and easy to be found. But of course, the darkness hurts. There's grieving involved with what's happening in your life, and sometimes it's so much easier to not feel the emotions of grief, but to keep our prayers light and fluffy, or keep our prayers professional. But in those moments when we start to feel the grief, we go in to feel the depth of the emotions. All of a sudden, like Shasta with Aslan, we've spoken, and God is like, I am right here. In this darkness, I am right here declaring righteousness and justice for your situation. And there's a peace that comes in because you've heard this from God, because you know it's in the darkness and you've heard it, and there brings a peace. And you're like, I can walk further through this path of darkness because I know exactly where God is. Did not abandon me at all. He is right here with me, breathing with me. And I speak in my prayers, and I know He's right here with me. So a pondering question I want to ask. What if instead of looking into the illumination of God, we look into the darkness? What if? I have one conversation question for you, for your group. I hope you're meeting with a group of people. But how does faith grow by finding God in the darkness? Have that conversation, and I got quite a benediction for you. One of our young adults in our church wrote us a poem about this beauty of the night, what happens in the night, what happens in the darkness. And I want to read this poem to you, just stanza by stanza, with a little bit of breath in between, because each stanza has got something deeply to say about how the night is normal and how God is with us in these night times and in these dark times. You ready? The author is Marie Saunders. She was part of our church. The coming of night brings a new light, revealing a path for the soul. The dark swallows everything whole, enveloping you all in black, showing you don't lack, inviting you to stay on track. The dark is your hack. You are not alone. You can't do this on your own. You always know where you are, for you can go far. The night is open to you, a path for you to pursue. This darkness does delight, giving you a new sight. There is so much there that I want to repeat as parting words, but I won't, because something I think struck you. So with whatever struck you from this poem, or from the conversation, or from all of those scriptures, may you find this deep peace, because God is with you in the darkness. And may you just speak words into the darkness. May you speak your most honest prayers. I find out that God is there. Amen.